Today you all will be joining me as I look for some things that are fruiting this time of year. We are in prime mushroom season right now. A lot of the big polypores like hen of the woods, chicken of the woods, maitakes, puffballs are in season right now. A lot of your things in your malus family, the apples and certain crabapple species are coming up now, which you can grab. Walnuts are in season. Pawpaws are in seasons in some areas, depending on where you go. I don't believe there's any here in the area that I'm in today, but we'll just see what we find. And you all will be joining me in seeing what we find today. A few things that I will go over before we start going today. I will be only gathering about 10 to 20% mushroom-wise of the things that I find, because I want to make sure that there's still plenty of it to go to spore for next season, and if there's also any other foragers that come along that want to harvest some stuff, they still have plenty to gather for themselves. I am also paying attention to any still water areas, so areas that are collecting large amounts of water that runs the risk for runoff, and waterborne illness that can collect. So if there's plants that are along there, I want to avoid those areas because they can make you very sick, and waterborne illness is very real. Really bright colored treated areas, you can tell when things are sprayed with herbicide. I'll maybe show you all some examples if I see any of things that look like they've been sprayed with herbicide. I want to make sure I stay away from those things as well because they can make people very sick. So already as we're going through here, we're starting to see the effects of fall taking place. We can look and see that there's a lot of leaves falling down and the leaves are starting to change color. We're creeping into fall. If not, we're already in fall. I don't know. I'll probably put it up on the screen. I don't know when the exact official day of fall begins, but we can see it happening already. I should note too, usually on trails like this that have paved areas will sometimes have herbicide sprayed on the very edges of the trail. But sometimes, they don't have a budget or they don't do it, so periodically at certain times you can go to certain areas and it'll be okay. But after a year or so, if they haven't sprayed. Something I'll point out right here that's growing, and you'll probably see these often all over the place this time of year. This is Amherst honeysuckle, one of the species of honeysuckle that we have. And I don't remember if it's invasive or not. I'll flash on the screen if when I edit this. But it is a really distinct looking plant, and it is not an edible plant. It is poisonous. You can distinct it because, one, notice the alternating veins on the main central leaf stem, and the fact that the fruit or the berries on here grow in 2s or 3s, sometimes even 4s, and multiples of 2 or 3s next to each other, so they look like little clusters at the joint parts of each leaf that grows. And when you see it in a crowd, it's really going to stand out in this area as being honeysuckle. That is a poisonous thing. It's something that you want to be careful of and not mistake for anything that you want to accidentally eat. So as we're walking right here already, this is already a cool find. I will say strictly in this area, I will not be harvesting anything. I am just strictly doing ID here. But if you look at these mushrooms growing right here, this is Dryad saddle or pheasant's back. And I'll put the botanical name up on screen. Now this is an edible polypore species of mushroom. Now in this case, this is at a stage where it's still pretty fleshy. If you give it a tap, it's still pretty tender to cut with the knife, and see it's breaking apart already. So this is a mushroom that probably still has some tender parts to eat. A way to identify is that it's going to have streaks like this, and if you notice, if I move this Virginia creeper to the side, it's going to grow from one prominent base structure of the mushroom. And if we were to look underneath, I'm only going to grab a piece here strictly for ID, is that if we look on the underside of this mushroom, you will notice that it does not have any gills but pores underneath it. As opposed to your other mushrooms that will have gills or teeth, it kind of looks like a little sponge-like structure underneath of mushrooms. And in this case, this is a mushroom that is edible. And if you were to smell this, it's going to give you a cucumber or watermelon-like smell. So these are things you can put together to help identify that this is a Dryad saddle or a pheasant's back. These mushrooms also really like to grow on elm or oak trees or willow trees, and you'll often find these growing at the bases or at the tops of already rotting or dead trees as well. There's a few other species of hardwoods that these mushrooms like to grow on, but this is an example of one that's growing low to the ground on this stump right here. It's really cool. So, cool mushroom to get us started. And if we look, there's also some other bracket mushrooms that are growing right here, which I believe is some turkey tail growing right here. It is. So we also have turkey tail growing right here. An example of just how closely mushrooms will grow in proximity to each other. And if you just pay really close attention, you can actually see a lot growing in a given area. We're gonna leave you to grow right there on your own, Mr. Saddle, and we're gonna keep going. Again, I want to strictly say that I am only doing ID here, but it is good to get yourself familiar with mushrooms that are growing in your area to learn what's around. This little cluster of mushrooms right here is one of the many things that a lot of people get confused with turkey tail, but it's not. The common name for this mushroom is parchment fungus, and I'll put the botanical name up on screen. Now, there's a lot of common lookalikes or false turkey tail mushrooms that are all different species and genuses, and they're kind of not differently related to each other. But in this case, I know this one specifically as parchment fungus because of the fact that this mushroom will specifically have algae grow on the top surface of it as opposed to other lookalikes like this. And it has a white underside that's really flaky and papery. So I'll show you all some close-ups of it, and I'll show you all a piece of it right now. So one thing to take into account, these are fuzzy on top, and there are lookalikes that will sometimes have the fuzz on top. But if you look on the underside, these are dark brown. This is not going to have those white porous-like structure that's in the bottom of your turkey tails. And if we look on the top of these, they don't really have that same gradient pattern similar to the examples of turkey tail I've shown before if we look at these really close up. This is catnip. You never need to buy catnip because you can find it growing all over the place. And mints will grow really fast. They're very aggressive, which is why many times people will tell you to grow mint in a pot. But unless you're trying to create a border around, it's actually fine to grow native species of mint around your area. Because a lot of plants, or animals I mean rather, that will come into your garden do not like mint and will probably ignore wanting to go in your garden to grab some of the goodies you have. All of these vines that you see growing right here, except for those that's Virginia creeper, but this giant leaf right here is a grapevine. It is our native riverbank grape. We have a few species of native grapes here in Illinois, but this is one of the most common ones that I've seen, at least in the central northern part. I've also seen fox grapes growing, and some people have cultivator varieties that will start growing naturally. But it is a very cool plant. Now, lately this season, I don't know if it's been because of how dry it's been, but a lot of the grapes have been really bad. They haven't tasted as good as they have last season. Other foragers I've talked to have noticed that they kind of taste like bell peppers. They don't really have a good taste to them, so I think it just depends on where you're getting it from. But there are native grapes right here, and there's probably a few things that you'd be able to get at some point. Hi. These mushrooms that are growing right here are some kind of coral tooth fungus. I've actually never seen this many growing in a given spot, and they're everywhere, all over the place. Sadly, I'm not too familiar with this species or this kind of grouping of fungi, so I actually don't have too much experience with even if these are edible or not. I do know that there are some species of edible coral tooth fungus like this that are, but in the case of these, I will be leaving these here and talking about them. I will show a close-up of them and what they look like because these are some really cool, and it's a fascinating find. Also, as I look through here, there's a bunch of other things that I am noticing. There's some earth stars around here, some very unique fungi that's around here. So I'll be showing close-up of just kind of everything that I'm seeing right now. And then if I have a guess or an idea of what they are, then I'll put them on the screen as I'm showing shots of them. And yeah, in a future post, I'll talk about some of the things that I've learned as I do my own personal research about some of these mushrooms.